Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and this is the podcast where we interview experts from around the world on such subjects as presentation skills, leadership, visibility, and communication. Before I go on to our awesome guest today, let me remind you that if you are curious how your presentation skills are doing, you can take a free 4-minute assessment right now. You can pause and take it now at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where maybe a little bit of support could get you the results you need and the recognition you deserve. The reason why this matters is because presentation skills are one of the best ways to become visible, to show your value, which of course positions you to be a force in your industry, to become a thought leader, to be the person who is followed, the person who is hired, or the person who is promoted. My guest today is Jenny Locklin, who is of Creative Message Media, who is an expert comedian, uses humor as a presentation skill. Jenny's official bio is she brings laughter and fun to your organization and events through speaking delivered by her and those she mentors. Jenny's best known for putting an end to boring and ordinary meetings and trainings. What started out as customized comedy videos has morphed into funny live presentations for both virtual and in-person events, teaching others how to add humor and fun to their speaking, and her most recent innovation, funny fake testimonials to dupe the audience for company meetings and trainings. Think of it as comedy in unconventional ways. Jenny is an expert on how to add humor to your presentation. So we're actually talking as presenter to presenter here to get advice on how you can be funny. You can add humor to your presentation, even if you don't think you're funny. It is possible. It is a learned skill. Jenny Locklin is an expert. So let's go to the interview. Jenny Locklin, I am so happy to have you as a guest on Speakers Who Get Results.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So happy to be here.
Well, it's really fun. This is part of a little series I'm doing about Presentation Skills Month. And certainly talking about humor is one of the questions my clients ask me all the time. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to an expert. But before we get into how do you be funny if maybe you don't think you're funny, or how do you incorporate humor, let me ask you about your dream interview. If you could interview somebody who isn't with us anymore, maybe you're sharing the stage, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
Great question. Well, she's not long gone, and it would be Betty White. And I would imagine a lot of people might want to interview or at least be with that amazing woman. The first question I would probably ask her is something maybe similar to what you listening would ask is, how did you get so funny, right? How did you create this lifetime of humor? And my guess would be that she would say something like, the first step in creating humor and being funny is not taking yourself too seriously. And I think that's one of the best things about Betty White that I have seen, that I've read about, is that she, was very professional. She took her job very serious, but she laughed at herself. And that is the very first tip in anything to do with humor. If you can't laugh at yourself and you can't laugh at the mistakes and look in the mirror and laugh at something, then it's going to be very hard to create laughter for other people.
Well, and if you think of it, that Betty White, she had a long career. And when she started out, she was just another blonde. She was just another one of the girls, the young girls. And then at some point, somebody figured out she could be funny. She figured out she could be funny. And humor will really set you apart. Humor makes people remember you. And so being able to use that humor, especially as a beautiful blonde, where quite often, as a young, that blonde girl over there, she would not have been taken seriously as a comedian. She would be typecast as, she must be the romantic ingenue. So you, as the point of view of someone who actively uses your comedy, how do you look at that sort of career?
Well, I think that you're right. It made her stand out. And maybe she, like you said, she wasn't funny at the beginning. She was just another blonde. And luckily for her, she figured out that humor can allow her to stand out, and not only stand out, but have a career till she was 99 in movies and shows. Whereas maybe the
ingenue.
Right. Exactly. Once they get old, they, Hollywood doesn't want to put them in movies or whatever. And so I think that humor is one of those skills that when you learn how to use it, and it is let me make that really clear. It is a learned skill, because a lot of people think, I wasn't, I'm not funny. I was never funny. People are just born funny. It's not true. It's a learned skill. It's just like learning to be a better speaker, learning to be a better golfer, learning to be a better writer. It's a skill. And so, some people have maybe more of a silly side to them, but it's like a muscle, you can develop it. And so I think that that's the best thing for you as a speaker to know, is that when you add a little humor, and it doesn't have to be rolling on the floor laughing. We're not talking about you becoming a comedian. We're not talking about you turning into a clown. We're just saying a little a little giggle, a little smile, because that connects you. That's really the best. I mean, that's why everyone loved Betty White, right? Is that connection. It was so endearing and you like them. And when you use humor as a speaker, not only does your listener start to feel connected, you as a speaker start to feel so much more relaxed. You start feeling so much more confident, and then you have more fun. You're seeing your listeners smile and laugh, and you're thinking, I'm responsible for that. So it's selfishly, if nothing else, do it selfishly for yourself as a speaker. But I think that, like you said, it allowed Betty White to stand out and have a lifetime career. And a lot of speakers don't use humor. And
a lot of speakers are afraid.
They are afraid. And there's a good reason for that, because we've all done this. We've tried to use humor, right? It flopped. We felt foolish. And then we thought, I am never going to do that again.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And that's usually what happens. I don't want to look stupid because nobody laughed. There are ways that I can tell you what you can do so that you never feel foolish and it's never awkward.
Well, another thing that we may get into if we have time later on is also, this is such a multicultural world nowadays that chances are, I work with a lot of people in tech and law. And so you're speaking to people for whom English is their second or third language. They grew up with a whole different sense of humor. And I live half the year in Austria. I'm married into a German family. And so my in-laws laugh at jokes that just don't get me at all. I just don't understand. And I'm very careful about the jokes that I can tell, that most of them don't translate well. There are only a few that are universal enough that you can translate. So it is a challenge. It's a challenge to think about that. Let's talk about speaking English and you doing a presentation. And yes, humor is important. How can we, I don't want to say safely try humor, but how can you try to add a little spice, adding a little extra pepper to your pasta dish? Or
Yeah.
How do you start?
Yeah. Well, so a couple of ways. One, well, first of all, anytime you make fun of yourself, you're safe.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't tell on Zoom, which I love. It's the only thing I do like about Zoom is you can't tell how short I am. I am extremely short, like 3 inches from requiring a booster seat short. Okay.
Okay.
So, I know all the jokes. Oh, the shorter you are, the softer the fall. You save money on body wash, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But that's pretty much how I am. So when I speak, if I'm doing anything, I can sometimes bring up the fact that I'm short, and that's not going to offend anyone because I'm making fun of myself. If you have an accent, you can make fun of your accent. Maybe you're not going to understand, maybe some words will be difficult to understand. Jenny is from Brazil, or not, whoever you are, right? And you're making fun of yourself. If you're old, my dad has been speaking for 48 years. He's 80 years old, and he speaks to a lot of younger people. And so he knows that that's one of the things, you always want to think, what is your audience thinking? What are they thinking right now? And he knows that they're thinking, wow, this guy's old. And so he makes fun of that. And that's not going to offend anyone. So that's one way. Another really easy way is if you are using slides, a PowerPoint of any kind, and especially on virtual, because virtual, that's even harder to can be sometimes a challenge to keep people's engagement and connection. And am I able to share my screen? I was going to show.
Yes, you should.
Okay, so I'm going to show you an example. I have a little slide deck, lots and lots of images. I'm not going to go through those. I'm just going to go through a few. But images are one of the easiest ways to add humor because you don't have to tell a joke. And especially, let's say you have a couple of different languages and you're concerned about the language barrier. I will tell you that baby memes, baby videos, baby GIFs, the animated baby GIFs, they're called. And babies and dogs, you cannot go wrong. I've never had a single person offended. And regardless of your language, you're watching, so it's visual. And everybody loves babies and dogs. I've talked to 20-year-olds, I've talked to 90-year-olds, and everything in between, men and women, it always works. So let's just say, so I'm going to share my screen, okay? And Elizabeth, let's just say the speaker was a fitness coach, okay, or a dietitian, and they're saying, okay, how to lose weight. We're all trying to lose a couple pounds. Summer is coming. Have any of you, Elizabeth, have you ever used diet utensils?
No.
Oh my gosh, these are the greatest.
Okay, you got me.
I mean, I've lost a few pounds already, I tell you. Okay. And have you ever, Elizabeth, been on a diet and like, no matter how many bites of kale and broccoli, it's just like, you feel like this baby?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, good.
Okay. All right. And maybe if your doctor ever tells you that you need to eat more fish, less red meat, here is your solution. Right? I mean, it's very simple.
Okay. Good.
And here's the biggest, I'm going to stop sharing because I didn't. Okay. So this is just a quick little example, but if you saw the baby.
Folks, if you're listening, our listeners, if you're listening to the audio version of this, go back and watch the video. We're on YouTube. Like us while you're at it. And Jenny had some great images. I'm not even going to try to translate them.
Yeah. Okay. So did that make sense as far as?
It did make sense. They were universal images and funny and silly, and everybody gets it. Yeah. I laughed in spite of myself, and I'm analyzing this. So yes.
Right. And so images are great because they keep your audience's attention. It's very clear, especially if you use, a drooling dog. Let's just say you're talking about being tired. You could say, oh, have you ever been tired? Okay, that would be what an ordinary speaker would say. Or you could have an image of a woman or a man who looks sleepy. And that would be, example of tired, but that would be ordinary. Mm-hmm. Or you could have a dog drooling on a couch that's adorable, right? And you could say, have you ever been so tired you feel like click? And then your punchline or the laughter comes from click, the image of the dog drooling. So maybe just think about that. Anytime you are saying, or do you ever want to have even more money? You could have the word money on a slide, ordinary. You could have a picture of cash, ordinary. Or you could have a baby GIF, there's all kinds of funny videos.
Babies throwing money around.
Exactly. Yeah. And so always kind of up the engagement connection level by asking yourself, can I sub that word or ordinary image out for a funny one?
Now here, I'd like to catch something before we move too far away. You said something very interesting. You said, do you ever have more click? The timing is so important. This is actually why comedians rehearse for hours. They'll rehearse a bit for hours. And I find I have clients who said, why do I have to practice this out loud? I said, believe me, the timing of how you deliver something, comedy is so much more the precision of the timing. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay, so some good news and some bad news. The good news is you will get the timing and it will come. The bad news is the only way you can learn timing is to actually get up and do it, which means you got to try it out on an audience, which, you want to practice on your own, but you have to really do it in real time to kind of get the feel of it. So again, it's a learned skill, but here's how you can how you can learn the timing without feeling foolish, because the goal here is how can we use humor without feeling foolish and awkward. And the biggest suggestion I have with that is, I think sometimes people try to inject humor and they're like trying too hard, and then it gets kind of wonky and weird. So my suggestion is, if you pick if let's say you're talking about the stock market or finances, and all of a sudden you inject a knock joke or a dumb blonde joke, it's like, what? That had nothing to do with what you were talking about. And then you don't get a laugh, then it's really awkward and you feel foolish. But if you're talking about finances or the stock market, and then you insert either a joke about money, and it doesn't get a laugh, but it's relevant. That's the key.
Yes, right.
Relevant. So if you don't get a laugh, you just keep going. No big deal. They're not going to think that was awkward. They're just going to think that was supporting whatever you were, your point you were making. So like, for instance, I was pretending I was a speaker talking about fitness, right? Mm-hmm. And so if I put in, have you ever tried this kind of a diet? And I showed some funny image of a guy juicing a bunch of junk food, and you didn't laugh, it wouldn't be awkward because it's relevant to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about juicing, I'm talking about healthy eating, I'm talking about exercising, but I promise you, they will most likely laugh. But if they don't, it's not weird, and you won't get that icky feeling of like, oh, why did I say that?
Let me ask you a couple of couple of things about that. One is certainly having, in my opera days, having directed comic operas and the timing you need to use to make a joke work. You also said something about adding something relevant that supports your point. Are jokes and questions and stories and such, I've always heard, or I believe, are illustrations to your main point. Mm-hmm. And you have a very funny video about a kind of a cake, which I think I can put a link to it in the show notes, but talk a little bit about how you used that making a cake and how you turned it into something funny.
Mm. Yeah. So if you've ever made or heard of a poke cake for if you've never heard of what that is or don't know what that is, you make a cake and then you make the cake, you bake it, and then you poke holes, hence the word poke. You poke holes in it. And then once the holes are poked, then you pour, it's like a really sweet cake. I think you pour either the syrup or the icing
liquid
or whatever.
Frosting. Yes, yeah, you could do that. Yes,
and it kind of like seeps into the cake. It goes through these holes.
Yes,
and the example there is because I have a friend who's very analytical and she's got a great sense of humor, but she's always like, "Oh, I'm not funny. You know, I don't know where to come up with funny. I can't think of funny ideas." And I think that's sometimes what people think. They try to think of what's funny when really just start putting together your message that's not funny. Like whatever your message is. Maybe your message is on mindset. Maybe your message is on investing money, saving money. Maybe your message is on being a good parent. Okay. None of those are, quote, funny. You get your message, you get your ideas in place. And then once the cake is baked and it's, your bones are, you've got the bones of the speech, then you go back and you insert that syrup or the sweet stuff, right? Which is the humor. Right. So you could, let's say you're giving a message about being a great parent, and you can go back and that's where maybe you tell some stories of some bad parenting moves on your part, right? We've all had bad parenting moves.
Yes.
In fact, I have a 17-year-old daughter, but I can still remember when she was 8, I was driving the school carpool lane with her. And if you've ever driven the school carpool, it's like the most stressful thing ever. And I was really stressed out. And she said, at 8 years old, she said, Mom, with that sunlight coming in through the window? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, I can see all the hair on your chin. Okay. So maybe if you're given a parenting message, maybe you have one of those moments where you're like, oh gosh, parenting is not always the easiest. You inject that. Yes. Or maybe there was another time and then you inject that humor, or maybe you inject a funny meme of parenting or kids. So you start out with the main message and then you poke holes and add, it's just a little bit. We're not talking
just a little bit, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yep.
Another advantage to this is that it will make your voice change. I like to use stories, metaphors, questions as a way of breaking up the monotony of people who are said. So if you're doing an internal presentation, you're doing a report, then you could break it up, the monotone,
right,
by putting in a joke. What do you say to people who say, when people say, I'm giving a report to the board, I can't be funny. I don't dare be funny. This is serious work about the budget, for instance. How would you, well, let's say you're talking about the budget and maybe it's not, the projections are not as good as you want them to be. How would you make those funny without mocking, without ruining your credibility?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. That's and yeah, I hear this a lot. So my suggestion, again, this is just my point of view. I'm not saying, you take what you want out of this, but when you talk about sales statistics or sadness, you definitely need humor. Mm-hmm. And you could be talking about cancer. You could be talking about dementia. You could be talking about a terrible budget, like you said, and you can still add humor. And you might be thinking, well, how? How do you do it so it doesn't cheapen or offend or it's not very funny? So let's just say you said bad news. You got to deliver some bad news about the budget. Mm-hmm. There's a meme that I have, and I set it up. Well, for instance, the budget. Okay. So it's bad news. It's not good. Mm-hmm. But the good news is, as you all know, things could always be worse. It's how we look at things. In fact, click. So I have this meme and it's a picture of a toothbrush and a toothbrush and toilet paper, like side by side. Uh-huh. And the toothbrush says, I hate my job. And the toilet paper says, oh, please.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay. So that would be relevant in making your point that things could always be worse. You mm-hmm. get a little kind of, and that's something that anyone would relate to. It's toilet paper and toothbrush, so no one's going to be like offended.
Yeah. And
then you could say, okay, seriously, it's not a laughing matter, but the good news is, and it's, so you can always, if it's bad news, you can always pull some kind of funny meme or baby or dog and say, look, it could be a whole lot worse. And then you get the laugh. And the best part about getting that laugh is it kind of like de-stresses and relaxes people.
Right. Exactly.
So that's when it is really helpful or when we've all heard, let's say, a speaker talk about someone with cancer and it's really, really sad. And it's like really heartbreaking and you can barely take it. It's so sad. And then all of a sudden they say something really funny about their spouse who died of cancer, a memory of something they did. And the house just goes nuts, right? Because we can only take so much sadness.
We need that kind of release, that emotional release. Yes.
Okay. With the timing with the images, if you choose to insert some images as your humor, this is where the timing is really important. And think of that image as your punchline.
Yes.
So a lot of times when people are new at this, they'll show the funny image, they show the funny image, and then they say, have you tried diet utensils?
Yes.
And it's like, it doesn't get a laugh. And then they think, oh, it's not funny. It is funny. It's just the way you set it up. So again, it takes some time, but always pause. Just like if you watch a comedian, it's a setup, pause,
tension,
and then punch that punchline.
And then you create the tension. So we're waiting to hear what the answer is. And then boom.
Yep.
You hit. Yes.
And when you click boom and you show that image, you shut up.
Yes.
You let them like enjoy it, smile, and then move on.
Yes. Give them a chance to take it in.
Yeah.
Breathe. That's another thing that I find a lot of people, if you're nervous, they don't allow the joke to land.
Yeah.
And land and let people take it in and laugh and then start again. Mm-hmm. And that's the same for ideas. If you're giving an idea, if you've got a point, let people get it and wait. Don't keep talking.
Right.
Yes.
And that's so true. And especially on virtual, there's a little bit of a delay sometimes when you're using slides. I click and then it's like 1, 2, and then you see it. So like just slow down a little bit. And same with speaking, with ideas. You're so right. It's give people a time to digest it.
Yes. Yeah. I love this. You have a great tip about a mood busting tip for that you told me about when we were doing our preview call. Give us some examples of something that we could do if maybe we're not talking about the diet utensils.
Okay. Okay, right. So this was a story I was going to share with you, and I'm going to have you maybe cut me off, or I'll check in with you, because it goes a little long. And I think if I just share some of it, you'll get the gist of it.
So Jenny, you say all these wonderful things, but you're an experienced comedian. Can you give some examples, some tips for normal humans like me?
Well, stories are the easiest way. Mm-hmm. Another easy way, in addition to images. So let's say you can't use images, and let's not necessarily whether you use images or not, but storytelling. And you have stories, you have your own personal experiences, and you might be thinking, well, but they're not funny, but they can be, and they probably do have humor if you look for them. So let me share with you a little story here. And this message is 3 river rules to make your personal and professional life even better.
As in floating down the river, kind of.
Yeah, like whitewater river rafting.
Got it. Okay.
Elizabeth, have you ever been whitewater river rafting before?
I have, yes.
Okay. So you probably will recognize these rules. I'm not sure if I'm going to get through all of them, but and you as a listener, if you've ever been river rafting, you're probably going to recognize these. And if you've never been, hopefully it'll still be helpful to you. So it's important for you to know that before you go river rafting, the company calls you the day before and they tell you what to expect. Obviously you're going to be getting wet, so you need to be in a bathing suit. And they're going to have a professional photographer there taking photos of you and your family the whole day. So I don't know about you, but I always choose cute over comfort. And so I got myself all dolled up in my best bathing suit. I got my hair and makeup all done. I mean, I was looking pretty good, Elizabeth, pretty much like this. Okay.
Ah, yes.
I mean, that's what I looked like.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In my mind, this is what I looked like. In reality, here's what I looked like. So.
Okay. And so in the image, the first image was a model in a bathing suit. Second image, there you are, all wrapped up with a helmet and a vest. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. And yes. And, I'm going to stop share because the story is a little long and I really mostly just wanted to show that one little piece of it. And I want to help the listener here. So if you saw the actual YouTube version of this, you saw the slide. And I use the words in my mind. So and I use this technique in all kinds of stories. And how you use it is, so, you in fantasy, in my fantasy mind, I look like this Sports Illustrated model, but in reality, I look like very bulky and I had all kinds of gear and did not look sexy in any way. So you can take examples of your own life and say, like, for instance, let's just say you're an author and you're talking about your book. And you can say, when I got up to speak about my book, there were so many people that came to the meeting to buy my book, to hear me speak. They were out all the way, lined up down the aisle, all the way around the building. We had to call the fire department because we exceeded maximum occupancy and it was like a fire hazard. I mean, that's how many people came to get their signed book. In my mind, that's what happened. In reality, it was more like just my mom was sitting there and that was the only person. Okay, now,
Right.
okay, little extreme, but you want to think what would be the ultimate fantasy, and then exaggerate it, and then what was the truth and exaggerate it. Or instead of this is so grand and then the reality was so lame, you can flip it. So there's so many examples.
Ways of using that. Yes.
Oh, so many.
Yes.
And again, this is where the timing comes in. You paint this picture and you're like, oh my gosh, I made $2.3 million the first year I was in business. And I was working 17 hours a week from my bed. It was amazing. I was like an overnight success. In my mind, that's what happened. In reality, I was making about 3 figures that year, or whatever. Okay. So you can use it in any kind of situation in your own stories. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great technique. And you can use it in so many places and so many options. You get people all excited about all the wonderful things. Now I would think it would have to be in something about you though. You can't go in and say, wow, the budget is showing that we're going to break sales records this year.
Well, you could say, you absolutely could, because I've given a speech on a rattlesnake and how giant this rattlesnake was. It was so aggressive. It was rattling like the fangs. It was just, in my mind. In reality, it was like docile and coiled up, just like, not. So it could be a noun. It could be a budget. You could say, oh my gosh, the budget is through the roof this year. You can go on and on and on. And people are like, whoa. In my mind, that's where it's at. But in reality, we got a little work to do, and of course people are going to feel kind of duped a little bit, but at the same time, if you exaggerate it enough and you smile, it will be kind of all in fun. And then that's where you could follow up with, no, seriously, I don't have a doubt that it can be there, that we can hit that number. But until we figure out XYZ, we got some work to do.
Right. Wow, Jenny, this is so interesting and so much fun. How could one start? Start small?
Yeah, start small and start soon. So always better to just jump in and figure out what went wrong and tweak it than wait till it's perfect, because then you'll never.
Because it'll never be perfect unless you do it in front of an audience, and you have to fail a few times. Yes,
exactly.
Or fail. You have to have a few that they don't understand that was supposed to be a joke.
Right. And another part of that is it's really, really important. I can't stress enough how you need to have compassion for yourself. That's a really big part, because it's easy to beat yourself up and go, oh my gosh, I know I've done that. Oh, that was so dumb. That did not land. Why did I do that? No, you're trying something new, and you're doing it for the benefit of your audience. You're just trying to make your audience feel more relaxed, have more fun. You should not be ashamed of that. And so really remember, be compassionate to yourself, because you wouldn't beat up a friend that was trying to use humor. So really important, have compassion and patience with it. And the other thing is, you can pick which one is more your style. Do you want to do a story and add the in my mind concept? Or do you want to try, are you pretty comfortable using slides and you want to try that? And, you can always practice these things like storytelling with the in my mind. You can practice that on your friends.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're getting your hair done. Don't tell them like, hey, I'm working on this thing. Don't tell them that. Just go right into, so I was river rafting, just kind of like use them as, because who cares if your hairstylist or the person at the store laughs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's very helpful. Having compassion for yourself. I think that's probably the most thing. One thing I will say is that speakers who can be funny are listened to more often. They are asked to come back. They're asked to address groups. So it is a great technique to use. And I'm going to try your in my mind technique, Jenny. I'm just going to try it next time I do a live presentation.
Yay.
Thank you so much. Jenny, if somebody wanted to learn from you directly, maybe get a little help, how could we find you?
I think the best way is to go to my LinkedIn, and we'll put that in the show notes.
Put that in the show notes, yes.
Okay. And that would be a great spot. Another place they can find me is my website, which is creativemessagemedia.com.
And we will definitely put that in the show notes. So just a chance. It's full of wonderful videos, little short videos that she does, all of which teach you something. And that is also a lesson in terms of how you can use your material. And you won't do it like Jenny, you'll do it like you, but you can use your material to do 2-minute videos. It's another way to take a look and analyze after you've laughed a few times. Yes. Jenny Locklin, thank you so much for being on Speakers Who Get Results. I'm so excited, and I've had so much fun preparing for this because, of course, I had to watch your videos. So it was really wonderful. Thank you for having been part of us. And everybody, if you were listening, go back and watch this. You're going to want it. You don't want to miss these images.
Thank you so much. And get out and start laughing, whether it's at yourself or someone else, right?
That sounds good. Thank you. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. And let me remind you that if you're curious how you're doing with your presentation skills, you can take our free 4-minute quiz at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the results you need and the recognition you deserve. This has been Elizabeth Bachman. I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.